Oops, I messed that one up. Sorry, guys. Well, hey, I wouldn't be moderating a panel if there wasn't a mistake in the AV, right? So I'm just staying consistent. Welcome to the Colonizing the World and Colonizing the Worlds of Soul and Beyond. So I'm pretty excited about this panel. I've been looking forward to it all weekend. I think it's my favorite one. And I'm supposed to participate, but I think I'm just going to sit back and listen and learn from the experts. So I'm going to start everything off with everyone introducing themselves and telling us what you're up to and where people can find you. And then we'll just dig right into the science. So Rick, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Hi, my name is Rick Partlow. I write mostly military science fiction and some space opera. I have about 40 books and 11 series, and my latest is the Holy War series.
All right, we're just going to go down what I've got going on here. So Jeffrey, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks. I'm Jeffrey H. Haskell. I'm a best-selling superhero author of Full Metal Superhero series and Superhero by Night Wraith series, and I'm also working on an epic military sci-fi set in the far future for publication later on this year. And I've written a couple of one-off military sci-fis set in the asteroid belts.
All right, Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Asaro. I write science fiction, mostly science fiction. Every now and then I write one fantasy. Most of my SF is hard SF. I've written some military SF with lots of numbers.
Oh, yeah.
But really, I write space adventure, big family epic adventures. I also write popular science. I'm currently working on a book for. I inherited it when two bigwigs at NASA passed away who were writing it. It's a book about black holes, so I'm preparing it for publication. My most current book is The Vanished Seas. It's a Major Bajan science fiction mystery.
All right, awesome. Lisa, go for it.
Okay, well, I write as LL Richman. My books are science fiction thrillers, and they lean more toward the hard science fiction side of things. And I've got 15 of them out there, 2 universes, the Biogenesis War universe, and I've got a total of 4 series altogether in those 2 universes.
Awesome. And I'm James Fox. I'm a newbie author. I've got the Soul Saga and In Darkness Dwells, which just launched in the Catacomb universe yesterday. So check that out. I also write sci-fi thrillers. And I'm evidently horrible to my characters and abuse them ruthlessly. So if you like watching characters get beat up, you'll like my stories.
There's no story if nothing happens.
Throw rocks, right? I come from the film industry, so we're just supposed to throw rocks at our characters. I only listened that day, I guess.
You put them in a tree, then you set fire to the tree, and then you throw rocks at them.
There we go. See, I knew I should have gone to all of them. All right, so let's talk about the science of getting us off planet. I sent some questions around. We're probably going to ignore those and just go deep on wherever we want to, given how things have gone. But let's talk about first steps. How do you think this is going to go down? How do you think this is going to happen? And just jump out there. I'm not going to call on anybody.
Apparently, it's going to be mostly driven by private enterprise. And you could hold your breath and die waiting for NASA to do it. So.
Well, really, NASA has always relied on private enterprise as contractors. So, it's not that big a step.
My husband was a contractor there for many years before he passed away. And NASA wants to. It's not that they don't want to. It's just that you only get so much funding. But they're definitely working with private industry. And private industry gives you a lot of flexibility. It gives you a lot more possibilities of how you do things. Whereas NASA has certain limitations on the way that they can do it. But they want to. I mean,
the problem with NASA is that you get a president who'll come in and say, we're going back to the moon, we're going to Mars. And then 4 years later, he's not president anymore. And the next president's like, well, we're not doing that. We're changing this. So we never have any kind of long-term strategy with NASA because they're such a political football.
Well, they have the long-term strategy.
Yeah. they don't get the funding for it.
Yeah, they have to fight for funding, but they're good at it. I mean, my husband is good at it.
Yeah.
To quote a very non-scientific movie, one of my favorite quotes is
No bucks, no
Armageddon. We're sitting on 50,000 pounds of rocket fuel and 75,000 moving parts, all bid by the lowest bidder.
I thought
And
you were going to
that's-
go with.
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
you were going to go with no bucks, no Buck Rogers from.
And that's that's how contractors work for the government, right? Lowest bidder.
Yeah.
Private industry, though, doesn't necessarily do that. So Elon Musk isn't building his rockets on the cheap, trying to cut corners to get up into space on their budget. So, I mean, I feel like they might be a little bit more reliable than maybe ones where the hammers cost $800.
No. You have two aspects. I mean, you're absolutely right. You have more freedom to get it right and to do it in the way you're describing in private enterprise. But NASA or government, it's not just NASA. There's a lot of government agencies and university agencies. They can focus on the science. They can focus on the publications. They can focus on analyzing the data you get from all this stuff. So really, they need to work together to take those first steps. The ideal is to have the government agencies and the university and the research agencies working with people like Elon Musk and private enterprise.
In a perfect world.
What would that look like?
In a perfect world.
Well, you've got 17 laboratories. You've got Los Alamos, you've got Brookhaven, you've got Oak Ridge, you've got Fermilab, 17 National
JPL.
Department of Energy. What's that? Yeah. Well, JPL is not one of this. Actually, JPL isn't one of the 17, believe it or not.
It's Caltech, right?
Huh?
It's Caltech.
It's under, anyway, but JPL is still under NASA. So, I mean, you've got all these incredible resources, plus you've got the Elon Musks of the world. So, I don't know.
Jeff
So
Bezos
what-
and
yeah, he's
and
going
what's
up
his
soon, right?
Yeah,
Blue Origin, yeah.
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 What was the other one? What was the
Virgin.
Yeah,
Galactic.
Galactic.
What's the guy's name though? I always forget.
Oh, Branson. Richard
Branson, yes. Richard
Branson.
Branson.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the Virgin guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of.
I mean, Virgin.
I don't know if I put it that way, but yes.
Moving right
Okay.
along. Oh,
Yeah. So what's
Should
going to
we-
happen? What's the first thing that we have to do? What are like the prereqs that we have to check off before we can even start considering colonizing something?
we have to start getting mineral resources from out there instead of trying to
Yes.
ship them from down here.
There's a couple of hurdles that we need to get past, and one of them, is we have to start building stuff in orbit, and we got to build stuff in 0G with better materials than we can make here on Earth. And I know the space elevator is moving along pretty good, and I heard that they ran a line and ran a drone up the line up 20,000 feet, so that's pretty impressive. If they get that space elevator up and running, that would simplify things a lot. But building things that weren't meant to land on planets or take off from planets in orbit would simplify the process of moving to another planet greatly.
Yeah, the energy expenditure just to get it out of the gravity well is huge.
Who was it? Was Jerry Pournelle that said that orbit is halfway to anywhere?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if we could build a ship in orbit, then we could solve a whole lot of problems, because one of the big problems of traveling anywhere outside of Earth's Van Allen belt is getting killed by the 100 different kinds of radiation that are going to come at you.
It's not just the radiation either. It's there's so many things that can kill you out there.
Space is dangerous.
We need
Everything.
better development of what holds people in space, whether it's space stations or spaceships or giant, space stations that can also operate as ships. We need to develop those better in orbit so that they can go places and people don't so easily die. I mean, right now, if we go to Mars, we all want to go to Mars, right? But if we go to Mars and something's wrong on a ship with people,
I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Who go to Mars are going to die.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's
I'll tell you what. It's all the ships that we built so far. I mean, if you watch it, like I've been watching like Apollo 13 and the right stuff and all that.
Yeah.
They got all these aluminum foil thin walls because that's all you can get up there because of the weight. But if we start building stuff from lunar materials or asteroid materials, you can build walls, a meter or 2 meters thick if you want to.
And we've got,
and if you do it in orbit, you don't have to use all that energy and fuel.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I know. That's the other thing we need to do is develop new forms of propulsion that aren't as energy, use up so much energy. Years ago, I was part
post-chemical
of a breakthrough propulsion program run by NASA. And that was the whole point of the program, was to come up with innovative new ways of propulsion that would make, and what they said was interstellar travel more feasible. They were really
Yeah.
What was it, Catherine?
It was called the Breakthrough Propulsion Physics.
I heard of that.
And it was run by Mark Millis. I was a chair of one of the sessions, I think the second year. And it was overseen, it used to be overseen by NASA. I'm not sure who does it now.
Okay, so let's say we've got an orbital platform for constructing spacecraft. We've got a network of ships moving back and forth from the asteroid belt to this platform for materials. Where's our first target? What's the best place to colonize?
The moon.
Yeah.
I'd say the moon is a better place to get your materials first before you go to the asteroid belt.
Well, also, we've got those asteroids. I forget what they're called, but they follow us around in orbit.
The Trojans?
They're not too far away. The moon and those would basically provide unlimited material. I remember reading about a granite mine on the East Coast in Virginia, I think, and they said that there was enough granite in that one mine to provide all the granite for the world at the current level for 3,000 years. Wow. So a couple of asteroids, the size of Texas, following us around in orbit should provide all the minerals we need to do everything we want to do.
I don't know if they're quite as big as Texas, but yeah.
Okay, so the moon?
Is that, am I right about that, Lisa? Fact check. Is that the Trojan asteroids?
Yeah, that's the Trojans.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Mars too. Mars, it's not that far away. It's after the moon. It's probably
36 million at its closest.
Yeah, but I think it's a more realistic goal than say.
It's more realistic than Venus.
The question is though, and I've thought about this. I'd love for us to go to Mars, and hopefully we'll send somebody there just on exploration, but just to plant the flag. But is there any reason for us to have colonies on Mars? You know what I mean?
Well, was there a reason for us to go to the moon?
For us to do any of it?
Well, no, I don't mean. I mean, as opposed to building just free-floating space colonies, like in somewhere closer to what stuff we need, like in the asteroid belt, or eventually in the Jovian system, out there.
But how do you know stuff we need isn't on Mars? I mean, it could be the moons of Jupiter or Titan. I mean, or the moons of Saturn. But how do we know they have more to offer than Mars?
I don't know that we know for sure, but I mean, eventually, and I'm not talking like anytime in the near future, but eventually, I hope we're going to be mining gas out of Jupiter's atmosphere, like in a few hundred years. So that's something you're going to need for in the system or heading out of it. And there's always Europa and all the interesting stuff there. So I find that more interesting than Mars, although I know we'll go to Mars. I just wonder, should we try to make a large permanent colony on Mars? Or would it just be like some sort of outpost?
It might be more of a scientific thing than actually a colony of civilians.
Yeah.
But NASA has had its eye on Mars. When my dad was there, they were working on it, and Aldrin did his PhD on the Mars cycler, orbital mechanics. So it's been, we've had our eye on it for a very long time, and it's very feasible.
Yeah, there is also the point. I mean, you make good points about a lot. We do need things that we can get, like mining gas. I don't know if you mine gases, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
But also, living on another world, if we're going to leave the solar system eventually, or even learn how to live in other places on the solar system, Mars is the best place to start because it's closer to Earth than. I mean, we don't know about some of those moons, but it's it's closer than Earth and Venus and Mercury are going.
It's got gravity, at least, and
Well, I was
doesn't have bad storms.
Gravity.
I wasn't suggesting we build large colonies on the moon, but I was thinking like, do colonies on non-habitable planets make more sense than space colonies, like rotating space colonies out there near what we need to work on?
Here's one reason why it might make sense to go to Mars. Mars's atmosphere is 98% CO2. And if you take a methane generation plant and put it on Mars, you can use the CO2 to generate fuel. And you don't have that as you don't have an atmosphere on the moon. So,
That's a good thing.
I think that, just to kind of weigh in here, I think that industry is probably, I think Lisa's hitting on something. I think industry is going to drive a lot of these decisions. Where can we go that is going to give us more resources to go further, to do more things, and then the people will follow. Like I think that this path of colonization, if you will, is exactly that, right? Industry is going to go out there first, and then the people will follow.
It's going to mirror the westward expansion. You know what I mean? Like someone's going to go out someplace and start a mine. Next thing you know, there's going to be a bunch of people living there who also want to strike it rich, and
I don't know if it's going to start. I don't know if it's going to mirror the westward expansion, because you can't just store your stuff into a wagon and go there. You have to get on somebody else's spaceship.
Yeah,
well, I mean, clearly.
But people dream. You're always going to have a subset of people on the planet who dream about going out. Enough that as soon as it becomes even a little bit possible, they're going to go out and try and colonize. One time I was a science guest of honor at a convention, and they had the other science person was this guy who was doing Mars stuff for NASA. And he asked the room, now granted, the audience was already self-chosen to be interested in Mars, because that's why they came to the talk. But he said to the audience, how many of you would go to Mars as a colonist, even if you knew it was a one-way trip? Either you might die there, or there was no way to get back, because of all the
expense.
I swear 90% of the audience raised their hand. I was stunned because I didn't raise mine.
Maybe if I was single and younger.
We're more close to dying.
No.
They were just kids who had no family or job.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. Let's say we've got all these things humming along. What is our system going to look like as this happens? I mean, do you imagine
at what point
like aircraft or spacecraft routes like we have, terrestrially now, or do you? I mean, let's see what this.
Eventually, pushes. I mean, how the problem with predicting is eventually it'll happen, but how far ahead depends on a lot of factors that we can't really guess on. Because I mean, back in the 1960s, people thought, they wrote books, they wrote articles that by now we would have space colonies, we'd be on Mars, we'd be, traveling out to, I mean, look at 2001, A Space Odyssey, and that
was set in 1999.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't know that.
It's hard to say because our progress doesn't go in a linear progression. It's like fits and starts. And the only thing that I can hope for, and this is just hope because we haven't been here before, that at some point we will have the whole thing will have enough momentum that whether or not governments want to do it, that private industry will have enough of incentive to keep it going without their help or tax breaks or whatever. And I'm hoping we can get to that point soon. We've been waiting for it for a while, and if that's the case, then eventually, there will be cargo routes with unmanned cargo ships going back and forth, and hopefully, I think that manned routes are going to take quite a while. It's going to take some sort of real revolution in propulsion.
It hinges on technology. We just don't have it.
Yeah. If at some point we get propulsion that like cheap fusion propulsion, then people will go back and forth. But if we're
magic fuel, like in The Expanse.
Yeah, but if we're working on the stuff that we have available right now, or are working on right now, then human flights back and forth are going to be rare and expensive.
Well, I think you hit on an important point at the very beginning of your excellent answer, which is that the advantage to industry will drive development. Look at how fast we developed computer technology. I mean, it exploded. Back when I was a kid, we barely had color TV, right?
Huh.
But it's because there was a huge market for it. If industry finds something, I hate to make them sound, only interested in money, but that's certainly a factor. If they find something that is lucrative, then they will do the development. They will get us out there. I think the problem right now is it costs so much to get out there in money and
off the planet, yeah.
But it won't always be that way.
I mean, we are really, really needing a more efficient power generation system. If we could, I mean, fusion has always been 20 years away, but if fusion ever really happens, then that unlocks a lot of things for us, a lot of opportunities that we don't have right now. You could build a laser launch system. I don't know if you ever seen the specs on something like that, where you can use a ground-based laser to launch cargo capsules into orbit, and you can have them sucking in atmosphere to heat up on the way in, and just have a little bit of fuel to get them into orbit, and you're basically launching them for just power. And the power is cheap because it's fusion. So if you can get cheap energy somehow, it really does a lot towards getting us out there. But without that, it's still going to be clawing and scratching into orbit.
One thing I think that
shame about what happened with the Breakthrough Physics Propulsion Program. Mike Millis, everybody was impressed, and so he got job offers, and eventually he took one. And the program, without him to run it, kind of fell apart. I mean, I think it's still going, but not the way when he was running it. And that was really, they were saying, we want propulsion that solves these problems. That's not the standard form of propulsion. We want something new that solves these problems.
Yeah, I think one thing that we could do that right away, that maybe 25 or 50 years it would take to really get running. But if we built a railgun in orbit, we could launch. We could precede Mars or the asteroid belts or wherever with all the materials that we would need by launching things into orbit around other planets. And then when the astronauts got there, or the colonizers got there, all the stuff they need is already there. And if you were to build a network of railguns throughout the solar system, you could do the math where you could launch something from Earth and have it get caught by the railgun on Mars. And that would reduce the amount of time it would take to transfer things around. I don't know if spaceships at our current level of understanding technology will ever really have the ability to freely travel around the system, because it takes Mars at its closest is like 6 months away?
No, 8 months.
8 months?
8 months with chemical propulsion, and with the new kilowatt drive that they were talking, which is fission, nuclear fission propulsion. They think that its specific impulse is high enough to where they could get it to Mars in 3 months instead.
And that's using gravity assist, so it's not like you're doing a straight shot. You're
right,
stealing mass from planets. So I think railguns would be the way to go.
If you had fusion propulsion, you could probably get there even faster.
Well, isn't there a limit though when the human body can't take the acceleration?
I mean, if you're going even one gravity to Mars, is how fast would that be, Lisa? One gravity to Mars from here?
What gravity? Well, you're talking about acceleration is constant, which means that you're going to continue.
Yeah, Catherine was asking about the gravity that human bodies can take, but I'm saying even if you could get to one gravity, that would still be pretty fast. We can't do anything near that right now.
No, it's about an average of 1.3 AUs away.
Well, I mean, you could accelerate at one gravity for half the distance.
The entire
and slow down for the other half of the distance.
So at 1.3 AUs, I'm doing the calculations right now.
All right. Well, you're doing the calculation.
Yeah. Keep
going.
Go
ahead. Oh, okay.
No, keep going.
while you're doing those calculations, because I'm wildly interested to know what those are.
I bet you are.
So I love this stuff. I mean, you guys should see the Bible of stuff I put together just to write my pilot script. It's ridiculous. And I didn't use 99% of it, but whatever. I learned a lot. Okay, so we land on Mars. What do we have to do first? Like, I mean, if we're gonna try to establish some kind of industrial complex on Mars, and we need people there, what do we do first? I got my ideas, but I want to hear.
You want me to give you my answer real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you just said something. I just realized what you said. You asked what the human body could withstand. If you're accelerating at 1 gravity, that's all the human body is going to experience is 1 gravity.
Yeah, but to get the faster you want to get there, that you have to at least accelerate for part of it.
Right. And to accelerate consistently at 1 gravity for 1.3 AUs and to flip and then leave, it'll only get you to 0.0046 C.
But how fast will it get you?
We're just talking going to Mars.
Yeah, that's just going to Mars.
I mean, how long will it take?
It will take you. Wow. Really?
Wow. I don't know the math on that.
It would take you half a week.
Really?
Accelerating 1 gravity.
Yeah, so you don't have
constant 1 gravity.
You don't have to have high acceleration. Once you're out of orbit, you don't need high acceleration to get anywhere in the system. If you could go 1 gravity,
that fast, so you don't really need to accelerate a lot.
We don't need to go fast. We just need the fuel or power to accelerate constantly.
To keep. And I believe they're working on like ion drives at constant accelerate, but they couldn't get you anywhere near 1 gravity.
But it's 0.01 G is what those things accelerate you at. Yeah.
But getting to James's question, the first thing you have to do if you're going to have a long-term human habitation on Mars is build some sort of shielded place where they could live, because there's a lot of radiation you have to worry about, and there's no Van Allen belt, so you'd have to have like some kind, maybe water might do it, or you could use
liquid.
just dirt on Mars.
There's a trench on Mars called Valles Marineris that would be the ideal place to build a base.
A trench.
Because,
that's one way to call it. It's huge.
You're gonna live in the trenches.
Yeah.
And if you build at the bottom of it, not only would you have a thicker atmosphere, you would be protected from a lot of the dangers of being out on the surface of Mars.
And there might be water down there.
I'm so glad you said that, Jeffrey, because that's exactly what I did in my novels. They built in that trench. Yes.
Well, I mean, or you could also conversely, you could build at the base of Olympus Mons and tunnel into it, and build inside the solar system's largest mountain.
That's where the alien base is.
Oh yeah, someone wrote in the comments to make go in caves in Mons Olympus. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
It has a lot of stuff separating you from the atmosphere or from the unprotected.
But that's the first thing you'd have to do is choose a place to have your habitation. I mean, and Olympus Mons or Valles Marineris sound good, but it also has to be somewhere where you can actually build the stuff you're going to be using, and that may or may not be at the bottom of Valles Marineris. I don't know.
It also means you have to get all that stuff out there somehow.
Well, getting stuff to Mars seems like it would be the easy
from
part.
the natural stuff on Mars, and we have to bring the equipment to build it, and that's not a small amount.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether we go to Mars before or after we get our mining base on the moon or wherever.
We have to have an orbital infrastructure to have a really good go at colonizing Mars.
I mean, we can go to Mars and visit and do science experiments without that. But if we are going to colonize Mars, then we have to have orbital construction. Right. We have to have sources of ore, and fuel out of Earth's orbit.
Shipments arriving in Mars planned out years in advance of food and water and things like that, because you're not going to be very quickly getting that on Mars. I mean, I don't see the growing food very fast.
And that's why you would have something like the Mars cycler going constantly that would get you. It's a Amtrak to Mars.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Well, is it possible to extract, or do we know yet if it's possible to extract water from on Mars itself?
Well, there is some water on Mars, as I understand, at the ice caps. polar caps.
Because
But
if we can do that, that at least means that not all of the water has to be brought from.
problem is, I mean, it's not really going to be convenient to live at the poles. So getting the water to where you are may be just as hard getting it from there as shipping it from the asteroid belt.
Yeah, I mean, there's always. I remember reading a book a long time ago where they had this idea of crashing a bunch of ice asteroids and comets to Mars,
terraforming
to make the atmosphere more thick with water. But I mean, that was before they realized that the problem with Mars isn't the atmosphere is thin. The problem with Mars is that its core doesn't spin, and there's no making an atmosphere on Mars ever. It'll never stick. Unless they can find a way to, make the core spin. And if we've got that technology, then we're just teleporting to Mars anyways. But I feel like
might as well go to Alpha Centauri.
I feel like, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you almost have to build in Olympus Mons or the valleys, because otherwise there's so little atmosphere on Mars, there's so little magnetic protection on Mars. The first time, one of those giant solar storms hits you, everybody dies.
Well, if you built anywhere else, you would have to dig some sort of shelter where people could take refuge during a solar storm, like an underground shielded shelter where you would get warning, and you could just jump in there and you'd have to write it out if you're anywhere else. And they'll have to do that anyway, because they're going to be working other places on Mars besides Valles Marineris and Olympus Mons. They'll have to go out places, and if a solar storm is going to hit, they have to have some place they can take shelter nearby.
But I mean, like, if you were forced to only have a shelter that you constructed, that would limit the number of people in any one given location. But if you built in a place that was a shelter, then you could have more people there, even if you did have to have shelters at all the work sites. But the main colony could be larger because you would have protection from the two big things that are going to kill you on Mars.
That was the problem I had with that movie, The Martian. I mean, I thought they tried hard, much harder than Hollywood.
It was pretty realistic. There were a couple of things that he said it wasn't.
I just wasn't convinced that he could have survived in that single structure out on the surface.
Well, you got to in the book they talk a little bit more about he made up this imaginary material that it was like Matt.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, it's not mentioned in the movie. It's mentioned in the book though. HAB canvas is not just canvas; it's a special kind of anti-radiation shielding that they built in orbit. It's that they grew like from a crystal. It's something he made up. It's hand wavium, and it was. And I think he did an interview where he said that's the biggest thing I just had to make up because otherwise I couldn't tell the story.
There were two things.
That was one of my biggest problems with the story.
Yeah, there were two things he fibbed on basically, and that was the HAB material and the storms.
Windstorm.
The windstorms. Wind just doesn't blow that hard on Mars. I think
I
miles an hour is what they said.
I still appreciated how hard they tried to get the science right. You don't know.
But well, he wrote that book in conjunction with a bunch of scientists who consulted with him from NASA.
And they did a really good job in the movie. Yeah. I've watched that movie over and over. I own it on Amazon Prime, and I've watched it probably a couple dozen times.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that.
Yeah, no, I watch it over and over again.
I put it on the background when I'm writing sometimes.
Yeah, Netflix and Amazon Prime, they're my downfall.
So let's talk about food. I heard a talk once that was entirely on how we feed Mars. And one of the things I thought was really cool that I will just throw out there for fun that we can beat up a little bit is orbital farms. Mm-hmm. I love this idea. And the one that I thought was the coolest was orbital kelp farms as a way to produce mass amounts of food with fast growth rates and relatively cheap and inexpensive. So let's talk about how we feed Mars.
In all of my books, I feel like, and this is boring, but I think that we're going to get a whole industry on how to make it less boring and more appetizing. But soy and spirulina, it's easy and fast to grow. It doesn't require a lot of resources. You can make powder out of the spirulina. Soy can be in a paste, and
Soy's bad for you, though.
Worse than dying of radiation poisoning and everything else that can happen to you on Mars. But they'll have to develop like machine, food processing equipment that turns it into something appetizing to eat. But I think that's going to be the easiest and quickest way to get large amounts of food there.
I also think
There's a company.
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
There's a company right now called Synthetic Genomics, and if you want to go look them up, they have invented something called a digital to biological converter. It exists today. It's about the size of a small room or a large, piece of equipment, but the concept is that you take vats of biological, biogel or bio ink, and you print. And it's basically the old concept of faxing a plan to something and then having it being 3D
how
printed.
How hard is it to make the gel that this is sort of...
That could be what I'm postulating is take the kelp farm, take the spirulina, take the soy protein, and use that as your formulation bricks. And then 3D print your food. 3D print. The company is has their target is vaccines and medicines and stuff like that. And that's another thing that we have to consider. How are we going to get all that to Mars? And it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to 3D print it on location than it is to ship it.
Lisa, how accurate, to 3D print something that was alive, the detail you need, do they have that kind of detail, that accuracy?
It's
not really alive. They're just printing like steaks.
Yeah,
it's texture, right? They're just printing texture, not
basically,
necessarily function.
But you need the nutrients too. You need all the chemicals that go into it.
Well, that's in the gel. That's in the gel.
Yeah, that would be in the medium, whatever that medium is.
Yeah, right, in the biogel.
You have to have the gel, and then they 3D print it into what looks like space or potatoes or whatever.
It's not like you 3D print a tomato and you get edible.
Right. No. It's they have like algal, ALGAL, algal cell factories. Thank you. That what he said. But so you've got all these, you're taking it from, bio ink. So you've got a source material. You're going to have to ship that, or you're going to have to create it in an orbital farm, or, it's going to have to be a source somewhere. But that keeps you from having to drink Soylent Green all the time.
Yeah. I think,
do you think they're going to make it to being actually able to 3D print, say, vegetables and that sort of thing?
Yeah,
eventually they will. Yeah,
they said in the chat, and I was going to bring this up too. KFC is already 3D printing chicken nuggets or whatever. So they have the perfect texture, the perfect shape. You don't get those weird nuggets that have like the weird hard thing in them or anything. Like
I had a bone in a chicken nugget once.
Earl Grey.
Yes, exactly.
That's the thing. Except you're not using transporter technology to do it.
Yeah,
I think that for me, I think the best idea for Mars would be greenhouses on Mars, because it would solve so many problems. One, there's plenty of carbon dioxide on Mars, right? So, and plants love carbon dioxide. So, since there is no magic oxygen generator,
what about the nutrients though? What about the nutrients in the dirt?
Well, that's the thing is, like, again, if you had an infrastructure set up, you could use a railgun to fire off that to precede the area that you wanted. So you could launch a bunch of canisters full of dirt that were, launched like if we can land a rover in a big airbag, we could launch, a canister of dirt. And
we've already what's the word? Contaminated Mars anyway.
Yeah. And if we, so you build a greenhouse, like a regular greenhouse, self-contained environment, put dirt on the floor, put the plants in there, let in the carbon dioxide, plants turn the carbon dioxide to oxygen, and suddenly you've solved a whole bunch of problems.
What about the radiation? You have to shield it, right?
Again, we're building it in the radiation-proof place with artificial light.
Yeah. Hand wave you.
No. In the valley or inside the mountain. Like a greenhouse, like we would today. The technology is pretty simple.
Let me bring up something that I read in a book once. Even at the time and now, even more now, the book's technical details were a little bit on the fuzzy side, but I want to bring it up just as an idea and see what you think of the concept. He brought up the concept of digging like we're building in craters or digging them and then covering them over with like a bubble that is shielded by water. We lost Catherine. It's shielded by water, and you store your water in there, and it also serves as shielding. I would, and he was assuming that the material you could use to contain that would be developed at some point, but he was very fuzzy on what that material would be or how we come up with it. But what do you think of that?
I think the more you can multi-purpose things, the better. Like the plants will provide food and oxygen, because you need the fewer amount of stuff doing the most amount of stuff. So if you could store your water above you and use it also as a radiation shield, yes, why wouldn't you want to do that? You'd have to do 100% water recycling anyways. You couldn't let anything go to waste. So basically, you'd be storing your pee.
Well, the fuzzy part was the material it would have to be made out of in order to hold that water in position, because the gravity is lighter. It's like a dome, and the water is inside the surface of the dome. So you'd have to have something that could hold that water in the shape of a dome. And right now we don't have any material.
Why would it have to be a dome though? Why couldn't it just be cool?
Well, I mean, it was to maximize living area.
Oh, yeah, but we could just dig down further. You could also have like a beveled shape, like a pyramid, but without the top. And hold it in there, and that could be elevated above the ground. I mean, there's some factors I don't know. Like I don't know how much water you would need to absorb the radiation that you want. I don't know how usable the water would be.
And also his idea was that
this perfectly usable.
His idea with this material would be also transparent in order to let in as much sunlight as possible. That's also something I don't know if is actually possible. But.
Yeah, but that was a bigger. I think the sunlight was a bigger deal when before LEDs. Before we mastered the ability to mimic the light we need to keep us happy and healthy and emotionally stable. Because we have that with LEDs now.
Because you're talking less light that's going to hit Mars anyway.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, the sun's pretty dim from Mars. But, I mean, we've got...
And that's going to only be another bigger problem going farther out.
Over the last 20 years, power consumption has gone down like 15 or 16%, but illumination has gone up like 20%. Because of LEDs. So, I mean, I think we got the lighting situation is fine. I don't think we need the sunlight. But I think if we could use the water to shield the base, then yeah, that would be ideal. You could even have a situation where, like, if you could do the best of both worlds. If you built in the valleys, you could have water pipes snaked back and forth and keep the water constantly moving to prevent bacterial growth and stuff. And have it always be cycling above you, so you'd have. And
you could have, if you built like natural looking things underneath you, like if you had gardens and stuff, you could actually make it rain through that.
Yeah,
water tank.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, it's a scheduled storm.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet, actually.
Again,
I mean, there are companies there's a company in England that's working on developing a magnetosphere, a mini magnetosphere. So I mean, there's lots of ways to, you don't have to necessarily have materials, and there's all sorts of different materials that can shield you from radiation. Water being one of them, aluminum. I mean, there's lots of different, materials that will work for that.
We just need the infrastructure in orbit in order to make all this possible, because it ain't happening from the surface.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need a caterpillar on Mars, and they're going to need an electric-powered caterpillar. It's 70 tons. It ain't coming off the Earth. You're going to have to build that in orbit and then launch it.
I'd like to see the math on that. Show me the math on getting a cat off of Earth.
These
build it in orbit,
These small fissile reactors that they're creating now are the size of a man, with the core that's the size of a paper towel roll. So, they're and they have they'll put out 10 kilowatts. I mean, you can have And you could even make a breeder reactor that way. I mean, you could have several of those. They're talking about putting those on the far side of the moon, because obviously you can't use solar power.
But they'll explode and send the moon into
How are they
other
going to get
solar
around the
systems.
treaty?
What's that?
How are they going to get around the treaty?
What treaty?
No nuclear power in space.
There's no
and
treaty that
that's
says no nuclear power in space. We've used nuclear power in space already.
Yeah.
In violation of
And-
the treaty. There's actually a whole big article about it.
Well,
Yeah,
Isn't-
any nuclear
isn't-
power in space is essentially a nuclear weapon in space.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to.
So-
I mean, the world's
have to
gonna
ignore that
get
treaty,
over
'cause-
that. We're just gonna have to
I'm
get over
okay.
that. That's a
it
good.
was
I'm fine
stupid.
with that,
It was
too.
stupid to begin with. They should have.
It was. Well, the whole idea of nuclear
And I think it's expired, hasn't it?
I don't know.
That I don't
the
know. I
details.
don't know anything about
The
it.
thing is that there's this idea that nukes are somehow bad, and people really need to get past that because nuclear power is the greenest of energy, and we're going to need to use it going into the future.
Have you seen Chernobyl? That's why people are scared of.
Yeah, we don't live in Russia.
power plants.
Don't get me talking
Well,
about
I
that.
mean, there's also Fukushima.
Let's talk about realism.
Well, I mean, you don't have to build it in tectonically unstable places that are prone to tidal waves. I'm still holding drive-wise. I'm still holding out hope for the impossible drive.
The EM drive or the impossible?
It's such a cool idea, and it seems to work occasionally. So I'm still holding out hope for that.
All right, we're coming to the end of this. What's some of the stuff that we haven't talked about that you think we need to stretch out off of Earth?
One thing that people fail to realize is that wars and conflicts are won by high ground, and whoever puts a base on Moon the first basically gets to tell the rest of the Earth what's what. And if that's China or Russia, Chernobyl.
I don't think it'll be that. I think that's simplifying it. As soon as anybody the countries of the world won't just settle for saying, okay, this person has a base on the moon, therefore, they're in charge. It won't work that way.
Well, if they put a base on the moon and build a mass driver and start hurling stuff at us, it will.
But it's not simple to do that.
Well, the thing is, though, if you threaten to do that, the other countries will just throw nukes at you.
Yeah. Politics is very messy.
You are coming from the assumption that these people are logical, and not everybody is. There are people.
I think that the danger.
Everybody
I think the danger of one nation being in control there would make a new space race. If one nation started, I think if we or China or Russia started industrializing on the moon, that everybody would.
Yeah, absolutely.
One country's not going to get allowed.
I don't think you could get to the point where you could be the dominant political force without somebody coming up there and challenging. I don't think it works that way.
Well, again, it's the high ground. If somebody had a military base on the moon with weapons on the moon, you couldn't get to it.
But you have to assume they can get that military base and weapons without somebody else from another country.
Oh yeah, no. That's my whole point. What I'm saying is we are actively ignoring the moon in favor of Mars or whatever. Meanwhile, China is actively exploring the moon and trying to put resources on the moon.
Well, we've got Artemis program coming up, and the Draco drive is geared for the Artemis program. So I mean, and that's nuclear. But
I think that we've kind of been talking really short term, but I'm thinking longer term. That there's going to come a tipping point. At some point, there will be a point where there will be more power and influence and money off Earth than on it. I mean, that's going to be a while, maybe centuries, but at some point it'll happen unless we die off as a race, that there's going to be more people and more power and more resources out in space than here. And at that point, then we will, I am confident, become an interstellar race eventually, because there's resources from Earth orbit all the way out past, into the Kuiper belt. And once you're in the Kuiper belt, you're almost to interstellar space. And if we don't do something drastic, like send a mission to another star system just for the hell of it, eventually, in hundreds of years, somebody who is out there, who lives out there, who works out there, is going to do it for monetary reasons.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think it'll even take hundreds of years. Human beings, if it can be done, human beings will do it. Right now, we're in the stage of figuring out how it can be done. We're wrestling with the technology and the cost. But we'll overcome it. I mean, it used to be you couldn't get from Los Angeles to New York unless you rode a horse. And it was unfeasible to imagine getting there in 2 hours, but we do that all the time.
I heard that I heard somebody's reviving supersonic passenger planes.
Yep.
United just bought.
Yeah,
they just bought it. Yeah. I think everything is going to follow the money. I think that the first time you start getting gold out of an asteroid or off the moon or whatever, like as soon as people start cashing in hundreds of billions of dollars a second, space is going to open up for everyone. Every country's going to go.
Yeah, it'll be like the computer explosion. They found a way to make money.
Yeah. And
it'll go both inward and outward, because we have there are theories about taking Mercury and just mining it and making it go away and using it as a resource. Venus, if you get up high enough,
let's make it go away.
Yeah, let's just. Yeah, we don't need that anyway. Venus, if you get high up enough and you ignore all the nasty
stuff.
But at a certain altitude, it's standard temperature and pressure.
Yep.
Just like on Earth.
I'm going to make a prediction that none of us will be alive to check me on, so it's easy to do. I'm going to make a prediction that at some point, something is going to be discovered that we have no indication of actually existing now in physics, that something is going to happen that is going to be, if you told us now, we would say that's impossible. That violates the laws of physics, and it's going to happen at some point.
I 100% agree with you. When we were doing the breakthrough propulsion workshop, the reason I got invited was because I wrote a paper that mathematically figured out a new way to go faster in light.
Inversion.
But the American Journal of Physics published it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and what I talk about in that paper is it's not that we can't do it, it's that we don't know how to do it. Someday there's going to be a revolution in physics, just like quantum mechanics and relativistic physics, that changed the whole atmosphere, not atmosphere.
We know there's something out there some unifying theory that we haven't figured out yet. There's something underlying all the physics.
Yeah. If there's not, it's something that is going to still revolutionize, just like when in 1903 when Einstein,
And scientists are looking for it. I mean, that's why these journals publish papers that are theoretical, because they're hoping someone will figure out,
there's a scientist in Germany who figured out the math for a warp drive and how to make it work. We don't have the materials or the power source to make it happen.
Well, right now, they say that warp drive would require some sort of material that right now is only imaginary.
Yeah.
But
math has always preceded physics.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think at some point that material thing, we're going to need, something with like negative mass. Well, at some point they're going to figure out a way to do things like that don't require us going into the center of a black hole.
Yeah, or it may be something we don't know. I mean, when quantum mechanics was proposed, like Heisenberg and Schrodinger was the one who did the Schrodinger's equation. All the mathematics existed to solve those equations. What it took was, or Dirac, who did the relativistic Schrodinger equation, he said, well, what if you do this? What if you assume that? And, Schrodinger came up with the idea of applying the wave equation to things with mass, because quantum mechanics says you have both mass and wave properties. It was that leap, that unexpected leap that nobody expected. And once he did that, all the mathematical machinery already existed.
Math is far ahead.
Yeah, we used to go in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and in technology, I can't remember the name of the theory, but technology, you have this peak of technological ideas, and then kind of the slough of despond.
We enjoy that technology for a little while.
And then, because everyone realizes, oh, well, we've got the idea, but then to actually get it off the ground and get, commerce and to get it into industry, a lot of technologies fail, even though they're viable. So that's going to be, an aspect that we're going to have to factor in too.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the failure points is not that we can't do it; it's that will someone sue me if we do it? If we put these chips in people's brains and they go crazy from having Google downloads.
That's the thing.
Get sued.
That's the thing about having a nation out there like China, is whether we do it or not, they don't care. They may do it anyway.
Yeah, they use CRISPR on adults.
So, really?
And
they do experiments on adults with CRISPR.
Yep. The guy's in jail for it. But
well, he
China
wasn't in jail for it until I can't remember what media source broke the news, but I mean, it was like, oh yeah, you go ahead and do your thing over there. Oh, you're doing that thing, you're arrested. It's China. They don't care.
All right. Well,
the biggest resource.
I think we could, again, this is one of those sessions that it could be a multi-hour long session. So let's continue the chat on Discord. There were a few questions I didn't get to because we were really in deep with stuff. Sorry about that. But be active on Discord and ask your questions. And thank you so much, everybody. That was awesome. Let's write up a paper on how to do this right and send it to whoever will listen. All right, everybody close out, and we already talked about where we can find you, but give it again quick, and then we'll call it a day.
That was fun.
I'm at rickpartlow.com or facebook.com/Duty Honor Planet, or you can look me up on Amazon. I'm the only Rick Partlow, the right science section. Jeff?
You can just type in Jeffrey H. Haskell, Google, and you'll find all my stuff. But I'm on Amazon.com, Facebook, /Jeffrey H. Haskell, and JeffreyHHaskell.com, which is super original. And all my audiobooks are available where audiobooks are sold, and all my ebook and print books are available on Amazon.
And you can. Oh, go ahead, Carolyn. Do it.
Sorry, I'm at CatherineAsaro.net. It's .net, not .com. And you can also find me on Patreon.com/Catherine Asaro. If you want to support my work as a patron, so I don't have to get a job as a waitress.
And you can find me at biogenesiswar.com or Facebook /LL Richman or any of the other Instagram, Twitter. My books are, ebooks are exclusive to Amazon. Print books are, you can order them from anywhere. Audiobooks are on Audible through Podium. And that's pretty much it. James?
All right, you can just find all my stuff at thejamesfox.com. That links to pretty much all my stuff. And this was awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, and thanks everybody for watching. Have a good one.
My thanks to all those great comments.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.